Have you ever imagined yourself stepping into a time when darkness consumed an entire nation? Can you picture the shattered lives and unspeakable horrors that unfolded? This is more than just a story. It's a tale that demands to be told. It's about survival, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit. Let's dive into the haunting chapter of history known as the Cambodian Genocide. It took place from 1975 to 1979, and during this time, Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge unleashed a reign of terror. Can you fathom the magnitude of this tragedy, with nearly 3 million innocent Cambodian lives claimed? Families were torn apart, communities shattered, and an entire generation scarred by unimaginable violence. Why is it so important to confront this dark past? Why do we need to honor the victims and ensure such atrocities never happen again? By shedding light on the unspeakable things that occurred during the Cambodian Genocide, we pay tribute to the suffering and guarantee that their memory endures. Are you ready to embark on a poignant journey? Together, we shall unveil the truth through the stories of survivors. Let's make sure the unspeakable Cambodian Genocide is never forgotten, and in doing so, we will forge a path towards a future where such horrors are prevented from occurring. Why did it all come to pass, and who was responsible? Well, just hold on. Let's get to the chilling realm of the killing fields and uncover the unfathomable transformation that unfolded in Cambodia. How did a group of idealistic revolutionaries seize control of a nation only to turn it into a living nightmare? In the haunting annals of history, the Khmer Rouge regime casts a chilling shadow over Cambodia, led by the enigmatic figure known as Pol Pot. This dark chapter unfolded amidst a tumultuous period in the late 20th century. A macabre dance of power and ideology played out, leaving behind a legacy of unparalleled suffering and despair. Pol Pot, a secretive and ruthless leader, spearheaded the Khmer Rouge regime from 1975 to 1979. Born as Salot Sa, he changed his name into Pol Pot, a name that would echo with infamy throughout the ages. Pol Pot's vision was fueled by a radical ideology, one that aimed to forge an agrarian utopia through the annihilation of Cambodia's urban population. What exactly was this ideology? The Khmer Rouge embraced a Maoist interpretation of communism as the foundation of their ideology that sought to obliterate any semblance of social inequality and reshape Cambodia according to their dogma. Their vision centered on the complete transformation of Cambodia, an endeavor they termed Year Zero. Their objectives included eradicating capitalism and Western influence, establishing collective farming for self-sufficiency, forging a classless society, devoid of the perceived corruption and inequalities that plagued urban centers, also annihilating perceived enemies, and encompassing intellectuals, religious figures, plus ethnic minorities. This radical agenda aimed to reshape Cambodia entirely, leaving no remnants of the past, and paving the way for a new social order rooted in their communist doctrine. You see, driven by a fervent desire to return Cambodia to an agrarian society, the Khmer Rouge implemented draconian policies, seeking to erase urban civilization and transform Cambodia into a vast agricultural collective. So, what kind of brutal policies were implemented? Have you ever wondered about people who were forced to leave their homes, their families, and their lives behind, only to be sent to work in forced labor camps, where they were treated like animals? How do you think you would handle that kind of life? Well, during the Cambodian Genocide, the Khmer Rouge orchestrated a nightmarish campaign of forced evacuation, uprooting millions from urban areas and relocating them to rural labor camps. This harrowing upheaval subjected individuals to unimaginable hardships, tearing families apart and inflicting immense suffering. As the regime seized control, cities were swiftly emptied, transforming once bustling streets into haunting ghost towns. Families were forcibly separated, scattered like leaves in the wind. The warmth of familial bonds was callously severed, replaced by the chilling grip of uncertainty. And what about the people who were sentenced to forced labor? For those condemned to forced labor, daily life became an unrelenting struggle for survival. As the forced labor camps were designed to break the spirit of the people under the scorching sun, they toiled from the dawn till dusk, and their bodies pushed to the brink of endurance. Malnutrition, disease, and exhaustion gnawed at their weakened frames, while sorrow and despair weighed heavily on their spirits. Amidst the harsh reality of the labor camps, resilience and a flicker of hope burned within the afflicted. Whispers of loved ones became a lifeline, fueling their determination to endure and fostering dreams of reunion. In the face of unspeakable cruelty, the human spirit clung to fragile resilience, refusing to succumb to the overwhelming darkness. Freedom of speech, religion, and expression? Who needs those pesky human rights anyway? The Khmer Rouge made sure to take those rights. So, who did they target, and why? The regime targeted various groups for persecution and genocide, including individuals suspected of affiliations with the former Cambodian government, foreign governments, professionals, intellectuals, the Buddhist monkhood, and ethnic minorities. Through mass arrests and executions, the regime sought to eliminate perceived threats, even targeting those who wore glasses or spoke multiple languages. Their objective was to purify Cambodian society along racial, social, and political lines. Victims included previous military and political leaders, business figures, journalists, students, doctors, and lawyers. And what ethnic minorities did they target in their brutal conquest? Ethnic minorities such as Vietnamese, Thai, Chinese, Cham Muslims, Cambodian Christians, and others faced relentless persecution. The Khmer Rouge forcibly relocated minority groups, prohibited their languages, and executed large numbers of people. More than 20 minority groups, constituting 15% of Cambodia's population, were banned. Ethnic and religious minorities were systematically targeted for persecution and genocide. Scholars and historians debate whether the Khmer Rouge's actions should be classified as genocide. Some argue that the killings were driven by prevailing circumstances, or retribution for past atrocities committed by others. However, others assert that the killings were part of a centralized and bureaucratic effort by the regime, pointing to evidence of systematic and mass killings based on political affiliations, ethnicity, religion, and citizenship. The scale of the killings, resulting in a significant loss of Cambodia's population, leads some to argue for the classification of genocide. Specific ethnic groups were directly targeted by the Khmer Rouge. Vietnamese civilians were expelled and subjected to large-scale massacres during deportation. Cross-border raids into Vietnam resulted in the slaughter of thousands of Vietnamese civilians. Chinese Cambodians were also targeted based on stereotypes associated with traders and moneylenders. Massacres occurred, and the Chinese government did not protest. Cham Muslims, Cambodia's minority Muslim population, faced some of the harshest persecution. The Khmer Rouge launched an extermination campaign against the Cham, viewing Islam as an alien culture. Initially, forced assimilation through population dispersal was attempted, but it escalated into full-scale mass killings. The Cham population would likely have been completely wiped out, if not for the overthrow of the Khmer Rouge in 1979. However, the Cambodian Genocide under the Khmer Rouge regime resulted in the deaths of millions of people due to execution, forced labor, starvation, and disease. While the exact number of victims remains disputed, the impact on Cambodian populations were undeniably devastating. Do you remember the boy in striped pajamas and the atrocities depicted there? Well, the Khmer Rouge definitely took some inspiration from those terrible deeds. The gut-wrenching details of their mass executions and torture methods is really like a horror movie coming to life. Well, the Khmer Rouge carried out internal purges to eliminate perceived threats and execute mass massacres in the Eastern Zone. They extensively exploited children, conscripting them to commit atrocities without hesitation. Torture was a prevalent practice, with prisoners enduring unimaginable suffering in places like Security Prison 21, S21. Victims faced physical and psychological torment, often resulting in suicide attempts. Babies and children were cruelly separated from their families, and some were brutally killed, while prisoners were subjected to horrific medical experiments. The Khmer Rouge's twisted actions included burning corpses and engaging in sadistic medical procedures without anesthesia. What was the purpose of these absolutely horrible practices? The Khmer Rouge, in fact, employed these ruthless methods of torture to instill fear, extract information, and maintain control over the population. These brutal techniques aimed to break the spirit of individuals and suppress any form of dissent. One of the commonly used methods of torture was known as electroshock therapy. Victims would be bound, and wires connected to electrical devices would be attached to sensitive areas of their body. Electrical shocks were then administered, causing excruciating pain and inducing severe physical and psychological trauma. Another method employed by the Khmer Rouge was waterboarding. Victims would be immobilized, typically by being tied to a board or a chair, while water was poured over a cloth covering their faces. As the cloth became saturated, it created a sensation of suffocation, triggering a panicked response in the victim and leaving them in a state of extreme distress. Physical torture techniques included beatings, often using various implements such as sticks, whips, or metal rods. Victims would be subjected to relentless and savage assaults, resulting in severe injuries, broken bones, and internal damage. Do you think the Khmer Rouge stopped at physical torture? In addition to these methods, psychological torture was also prevalent. Interrogation sessions involved psychological manipulation, threats, and intimidation to instill fear and extract information. Prisoners were often subjected to long periods of solitary confinement, sensory deprivation, and psychological degradation, causing profound mental anguish. And what could be more appetizing than discussing the Khmer Rouge's meticulous control over food distribution and the resulting widespread famine? Bon appetit! The Khmer Rouge implemented a stringent system of food distribution, exercising absolute control over the population. They aimed to centralize agricultural production and establish collective farms, eradicating private ownership of land. Individuality and personal property were condemned as remnants of a capitalist society. The regime enforced rigorous labor quotas, prioritizing agricultural work over all other activities. However, their policies and agricultural mismanagement led to a catastrophic decline in food production. The resulting widespread famine and starvation engulfed the population. Malnutrition became rampant, and the lack of adequate medical care further exacerbated the situation. With weakened immune systems, people succumbed to preventable diseases, and the mortality rate skyrocketed. The Khmer Rouge's rigid control over food production and distribution, coupled with their disregard for human welfare, plunged Cambodia into an era of unimaginable suffering and loss. Well, how about the haunting events that finally brought an end to the Cambodian Genocide? Did they finally run out of party favors? Getting curious, aren't you? So, the demise of the Khmer Rouge regime and the end of the Cambodian Genocide was marked by a series of dramatic events. By 1979, the international community had become increasingly aware of the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge. Vietnamese forces, deeply disturbed by the suffering inflicted upon their Cambodian neighbors, launched a military invasion into Cambodia. In a swift and decisive campaign, the Vietnamese troops overwhelmed the Khmer Rouge, routing their forces and liberating major cities. The fall of the regime brought a sense of relief and hope to the war-weary Cambodian population, though the events of 1979 marked a turning point, paving the way for a new era in Cambodia's history. The legacy of the genocide continued to shape the nation's path to recovery. Can you fathom the profound devastation inflicted upon Cambodian society by this relentless genocide? How did Cambodia heal in the aftermath? Well, the Cambodian genocide left an indelible mark on Cambodian society, its effects reverberating for years to come. The aftermath was, in fact, a complex and challenging period. The traumatic experience of mass killings, forced labor, and displacement left deep scars on the collective consciousness of the nation. Families were torn apart, communities shattered, and cultural heritage threatened. The social fabric was severely damaged, with trust and cooperation undermined. However, the country had to face the daunting task of rebuilding its shattered society, healing the scars of the past, and seeking justice for the victims. And amidst the darkness, seeds of resilience finally sprouted. Cambodian society began the arduous journey of healing and rebuilding. Efforts for justice and accountability gained momentum, leading to the establishment of the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia. The ECCC aimed to bring the perpetrators to trial, providing a forum for truth-seeking and a step towards reconciliation. As the nation continues to grapple with the legacy of the genocide, it stands resilient, determined to honor the memory of the victims and ensure a brighter future for generations to come. So, there you are with the whole story of the Cambodian incident. Doesn't it remind you of the year of living dangerously? Do let us know in the comments below. Well, thank you for watching Unthinkable Past. We'll see you in the next one.